This is KSL Sunday Edition with Deanie Wimmer.
Good morning and welcome to this week's Sunday Edition, where we build up, inform, and celebrate Utah families and communities. Today we're focusing on an issue that impacts our community on so many levels: immigration.
Out as a state to say we're going to be reasonable in our approach.
Utah took the lead on immigration more than 15 years ago with what's known as the Utah Compact.
The Utah way believes that we should be able to come up with rational ways to deal with this problem.
What's been the economic impact?
It stabilized our workforce, which is so critical to our economy.
And is it still relevant today?
If other states could have learned from us, or the federal government could have followed us, we would be in a much better place as a country than we are today.
For nearly 15 years, Utah has attracted national attention and accolades for leading out on the immigration issue through an effort known as the Utah Compact. 120 leaders in government, in business, and community signed the compact back in 2010 to influence the tone and guiding principles of immigration policy. But the real question is it still relevant now? It was a remarkable moment given the political landscape of 2010. The immigration debate grew increasingly hostile. Our neighbor to the south, Arizona, passed a law that obligated police to determine someone's immigration status if there was reasonable suspicion a person was in the country illegally.
Everybody across America is watching Arizona right now, and the violence is off the chart.
That contention actually motivated leaders in Utah to find a more tempered approach.
And you could feel some of the same turmoil, controversy, unrest that was being felt in Arizona coming to Utah. And Utah leaders didn't want that.
Let's establish what we think are the important principles that ought to be followed with immigration reform.
Community, business, and religious leaders spent months working on wording, and more than 100 organizations signed the final document. It set Utah apart.
It certainly did set Utah apart.
We stood out as a state to say we're going to be reasonable in our approach.
The 5 guiding principles of the Utah Compact for Immigration Reform: federal solutions, law enforcement, support for families, the economy, and a free society.
Should we keep families together? Absolutely. Should we enforce the rule of law? Absolutely. Can we do it in a compassionate way? Yes.
That Utah way, forging our own policy path, set a tone for lawmakers, and the compact put Utah in the national spotlight.
It was praised by the left, it was praised by the right, and then there were a lot of states that tried to replicate it,
including Texas, Florida, Colorado, Nebraska, and Kansas.
What I hear people say...
Fast forward to today, is there still broad support for the Utah Compact? The governor says yes. Utah Compact, do you still support it?
I do. Yeah, I believe in the Utah Compact. I believe in the reasons behind it.
But others aren't so sure.
We've shifted away perhaps from the principles of the compact.
Some original signers are calling for another signing of the Utah Compact to offset the negative rhetoric.
I think it would be good if we could reaffirm once again that that's the Utah way.
The Utah way may not be enough to bring leaders back to the signing table, but economic realities might. Has it impacted business in Utah?
It stabilized our workforce, which is so critical to our economy.
As one of the fastest growing states, economists say we need immigrants.
Immigrants are a huge part of our economy.
There are more than 304,000 immigrant residents in Utah that contribute $1.2 billion in state and local taxes. The Salt Lake Chamber says immigrant entrepreneurs bring in $650 million to our state's economy. Recognizing the impact, state lawmakers tried to follow up on the Utah Compact with laws that allowed migrant visas and work permits, but they were challenged in federal court on the grounds they overstepped federal jurisdiction. And that underscores the need for federal policy on immigration. Now, we heard from the governor briefly. He weighed in on the compact. He also had some important insights into how our state has been prevented from passing laws on immigration. Here's the rest of the interview. The Utah Compact, do you still support it?
I do. Yeah, I believe in the Utah Compact. I believe in the reasons behind it, and I believe in the message and the importance of all of it. Sometimes people just focus on the last part of the compact and not the first part of the compact. And I think it's important to focus on both of those. And the first part of the compact talks about law and order and the importance of supporting those who are entrusted with enforcing the laws of the land. It also there's this important piece about who is responsible for immigration policy and immigration law, and the Constitution is very clear that that's at the federal government. Now, sadly, the federal government has not done its job for, now moving close to 40 years. I mean, really, since Ronald Reagan was president, we haven't had major reform in the immigration space, and so now we have the federal government who wasn't doing their job and now is trying to do their job. But it's really tough to get this one right, and we've made a mess of it in our country. You'll remember that coming out of the compact, Utah passed comprehensive immigration reform. Sadly, President Obama wouldn't allow us to implement it. And then President Trump wouldn't allow us to implement it. So we had both Republicans and Democrats that refused to allow us to implement this comprehensive immigration reform. I still believe to this day that if we'd been allowed to do that, and if other states could have learned from us, or the federal government could have followed us, we would be in a much better place as a country than we are today. But here we are, and so yes, I do continue to support the compact.
There are some calling for it to be reaffirmed. I know it was reaffirmed once.
Yeah.
They're calling for it to be reaffirmed given the current political climate. Would you agree to that?
Yeah, again, I think they're timeless. I don't know what reaffirming means, but the compact still exists, and it's something that I think most Utahns support and believe in, and something that, again, our country could certainly use some healing on this issue.
The fifth principle of freedom and a free society, what does that look like in Utah?
Well, look, so a free society, that's part of who we are. It's part of the ethos. The American experiment was about life, liberty, that's the freedom piece, and the pursuit of happiness. And so freedom doesn't mean you get to do anything you want whenever. We have freedom because we also have laws, and as a society we've decided that we're going to put these laws in place. But those laws should be very carefully written and implemented in a way that makes sure that we're protecting our individual rights and liberties that we believe we're endowed with from our Creator. And making that happen. And so obeying the law is part of having the society and the freedoms that we want. And so again, I know that probably means something different to everyone, but certainly in Utah it means that we're very careful before we impose obligations on people that would hamper their ability to pursue happiness and live their lives as they see fit.
How we treat immigrants, as outlined in the policy, in the compact, set us apart as a state.
Yeah, for sure.
And does that continue to do that?
Yeah, well, I hope so. And again, we've always, in everything, when you look at our refugee policies, we've always tried to be incredibly compassionate, right? And that matters. And follow the law as it's written, right? And that's the hard part that I think so many there are people on one side, right, that just see the law and order piece without any compassion, and then there are people on the other side that see we just want compassion, but we don't care what the law says. And I think that's a false choice, and I think that's what's led us to this moment where you have this being so polarized. I've said for a long time that we have to secure the border. Like that's very important. And a lot of the country agrees with that. The other side of this is we also have to reform and fix legal immigration, and part of the country really believes that side of things. And I think you have to have both of those. You have to be able to enforce the laws as they sit on the books, but we have to do it in a compassionate way, and then try to fix this piece that has been out there for so long. It would surprise people when you look at polling on this issue. This is the easiest issue to solve. There is more public agreement on immigration than just about any other very conflicted and divisive policy, in that most Republicans also believe we need to fix legal immigration, And most Democrats also believe we need to fix the border. And so it tends to be the politicians that divide us on this one and not the way people actually feel. So I hope Utah can continue to be an example where we enforce the law, but we do so with compassion and understanding.
When we come back, specifics on how our Utah Compact has helped the state's economy.
Number one, it stabilized our workforce, which is so critical to our economy.
Then we go to Washington, D.C. to ask our congressional delegation about their role in immigration policy. And a lifeline this week that will help hundreds of immigrants already here in Utah. Immigration is a divisive issue, but one area where few disagree is the economy. Our growing state can't prosper without immigrants. Take housing. We have such a shortage of affordable homes. Governor Cox made it a priority goal of building 32,000 starter homes in the coming years. But who's going to build those homes? Asks a construction industry lawyer who is involved with the Utah Compact.
The governor has targeted 35,000 in the next 5 years, a large increase. That's terrific. And the governor is anxious to work on streamlining the permitting process and the other things that are impediments on that front. But at the same time, federal government makes aggressive efforts to deport a good chunk of the workers that are doing it. We're going to find ourselves in an interesting dilemma of a desire to build all the homes and losing many of the workers who would actually build them for us.
States like Utah have passed legislation to address the immigration problem, only to be shut down because it's a federal issue. But with so much not being done at the federal level, is there still hope for a solution? News specialist Daniel Woodruff went to Washington, D.C. to find out.
It's a beautiful spring day in the nation's capital, where Utah's newest U.S. Senator is busy settling in to his new job.
If I had a bill or if I had something, they'd come and talk to me.
But John Curtis is not new to Washington.
I hope to be a good congressman for you, too.
He's been in Congress since 2017 and has seen firsthand the failure to address immigration in any meaningful way.
Are you frustrated seeing Congress essentially abdicating one of its major responsibilities?
I can't tell you that I'm more frustrated about anything as much as that. It's incredibly frustrating. It's one of the biggest disappointments of my time here.
This goes back long before Curtis. The last time Congress passed any major immigration reform was the 1980s. Since then, there have been many ideas about how to fix the system, some of which Curtis supports.
But right now, there's huge criticism. Anytime you put your name on a bill, people will find something wrong with it, and I'm telling you, they come and they want to whack your head off.
But ultimately, it's the federal government's job to solve immigration. The Utah Compact states, "We urge Utah's congressional delegation and others to lead efforts to strengthen federal laws and protect our national borders."
Do you feel like the compact still applies today?
I do.
I love the Utah Compact because it hits all the key points.
All 4 House members from Utah tell me that document is still relevant.
I think the most relevant part of the compact is that it recognizes that it's a federal concern.
We need to work on a legal immigration process, and that's a lot of what the Utah Compact talks about is economic incentives and treating people as humans.
The compact calls for policies that keep families together, respect the rule of law, and maintain Utah's welcoming and business-friendly reputation.
I think the Utah model, the Utah way, would be a good place to have part of that conversation.
But actually fixing the country's immigration system hasn't happened. Utah's newest member of Congress, Representative Mike Kennedy, thinks that's unfortunate.
We need a coalition of willing people able to think clearly about a really complicated issue, not continue to use it for political fundraising as a political football. And embarrassingly, both sides have done that over generations.
I don't know what was holding it up before I got here, but I know in the time I've been here, it's been a matter of getting the border under control first, and we're doing that.
Representative Celeste Malloy supports President Trump, who campaigned heavily on immigration, promising mass deportations. Since the president took office, illegal border crossings have fallen sharply.
We have an administration that's controlling it.
I also wanted to ask Utah Senator Mike Lee about this issue, but despite my repeated requests, he never agreed to an interview. On social media, Utah's senior senator has cheered the president's immigration policies, some of which have attracted controversy, like the high-profile accidental deportation of a man to El Salvador. The Trump administration also ended a rule prohibiting immigration raids in schools, hospitals, and churches. A Deseret News Hinckley Institute of Politics poll shows 58% of Utah voters oppose allowing ICE to enter schools. Utahns also oppose raids on hospitals and especially places of worship.
The Trump administration is heavily focused right now on identifying folks that are here illegally but have committed crimes.
That's why Representative Blake Moore and Representative Burgess Owens both feel undocumented immigrants who don't fall in that category shouldn't worry.
I don't think that people should be concerned about someone coming peacefully to a church and somebody coming after them. We don't have the resources for that. I don't think we have the desire to do that.
With President Trump still newly in office, no one in Utah's all-Republican delegation is jumping to criticize his moves on immigration.
I think it's too soon to start saying what's working and what's not. Let's watch the process play out a little bit.
Still, can the complex issues surrounding immigration ever be fixed?
I am hopeful. I'm hopeful because I believe in the steps that we're taking right now to make sure we're getting the border under control.
And this is a hard thing, and we need to find a solution.
As for Curtis, he has a much bigger voice now in the Senate than he did in the House.
I know you're still, I guess, a freshman senator.
We're sitting here in my temporary office.
We're in the basement.
We're in the basement, yeah.
Based on your seniority.
Yeah.
But as you gain seniority, and you have a larger voice now than you did, are you optimistic you can make a difference in this realm?
Optimistic or not, I'm going to try.
In Washington, D.C., Daniel Woodruff, KSL 5 News.
Thank you, Daniel. One of the principles of the Utah Compact is a free society. It centers on understanding how immigrants are woven into the fabric of our community. It says we must adopt a humane approach to this reality and be a place that welcomes people of goodwill. News specialist Courtney Johns looked into how well our state is living up to that promise 15 years later.
Walking hand in hand.
She's amazing.
Guillermo Mendez falls more in love with his wife every day.
This is the person. This is the one.
Looking back on the years, they can't help but laugh at what people thought when Guillermo and Socorro said they were going to get married and move to America 42 years ago.
My mom told me, I bet you that you're going to do it just for 6 months and then you're going to come back to our house.
With visas in hand, they flew to America.
So I left everything, my job, my family, everybody.
They planned on coming back after they saved up enough money for a down payment on a house in Mexico. But by the time they had saved up enough money, they also had 2 children.
We know that we can give them a better life here in USA.
Now they're both U.S. citizens, building a life in the Utah community, which they say has mostly been welcoming, but will always have a small barrier.
I think it's a bigger barrier if you don't speak the language.
A barrier Myra Sanchez has been trying to break for 8 years.
If we don't have a voice, our experience is very impacting.
Myra had her first child when she was 20, knowing little English and even less about Utah. Now a mother of 9, she sees more resources.
It was all those things that I didn't have.
But finding those things, or even knowing they're available, is still a challenge to women new to the country, which is why Myra's made it her mission to help.
I have to do something that is different.
Founding Comunidad Materna in Utah, she's dedicated her life to supporting infant and maternal health.
Myra was excited to share her story with us, but that wasn't the case for most immigrant organizations we reached out to. In an email, one told us they're staying under the radar because of the current political climate, a climate that has tainted the way Myra sees the Utah Compact.
The latest political environment, it creates a barrier.
Governor Cox told KSL's Deanie Wimmer he still supports the compact, which he says includes support for federal deportation of undocumented immigrants who commit crimes.
Obeying the law is part of having the society and the freedoms that we want.
He says Utah's decision to enforce the law in a compassionate way is what makes this compact unique.
There are people on one side, right, that just see the law and order piece without any compassion. And then there are people on the other side that see, we just want compassion, but we don't care what the law says. And I think that's a false choice. And I think that's what's led us to this moment.
A polarizing moment Cox says still shows the compact is alive and strong.
I would beg to differ.
Father Martin Diaz says a lot has changed since he proudly signed the Utah Compact 15 years ago.
We've lost the value of the dignity of each of the people, of each person, each immigrant person.
But he still has hope.
Even in the darkest of times, I know that goodness will win.
He says a good step forward for our leaders would be getting rid of dishonest rhetoric, reaffirming the compact, and sharing what has been given to the community.
The goodness that has been done by all of the immigrants that have come here, story after story. They know it to be true.
Stories.
Sí, buenas tardes. ¿En qué le puedo ayudar?
Like Guillermo's, who is now a deacon at the Cathedral of the Madeleine.
Jesús con sus discípulos y les dijo. So we will start giving what God gave us to us.
Blessed with a loving family.
3 kids and 10 grandkids.
Celebrating with his wife how far they have come.
La bendición de Dios Todopoderoso.
By lifting up others new to their community.
I feel blessed to be here in Utah.